What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, freelancers of all ages? Joker back again, once again, and today people, we're going to be talking about the Anthem demo. What I liked, what I didn't like, and my general first impressions. Before we get started, we need to go ahead and address the load issues. According to BioWare, this was an issue that they kind of knew about. It didn't really come up in testing, but they thought they'd fixed it. But, as the saying goes, the best laid plans never survive contact with the enemy. And so during the release of the first demo, we saw all kinds of different connection issues, 95% load screen then freeze issues, pop-ins, pop-outs, rubber banding, just a bunch of stuff. Apparently this was a 6-week-old build and things will allegedly be smoother on release. Okay, fine, fair enough. I'll give EA and BioWare the benefit of the doubt this time and review the quality of servers and connections and stuff like that upon release. Connection issues can be annoying and inconvenient, but for all intents and purposes, this was a demo and this was the first time that these servers were tested at this scale. I'd much rather deal with some server-side issues now, a month ahead of the release of the game, instead of at the release of the game. Which, let's be honest, there will be issues. That kinda seems like the hallmark of the day one EA multiplayer experience. But we will go ahead for now and take their word for it. Second, I'm going to try to stay away from discussing any issues I have with the moment-to-moment gameplay. While it's amusing to go on stream and bitch about seemingly getting killed behind walls and enemies being way too bullet spongy, and over-exaggerate your anger about these things for comedic effect, the truth as it stands now is we haven't dug into what Anthem has to offer. Sure, I absolutely have some issues with a couple of things, but I would prefer to wait and see if those things are addressed in the full game with endgame loot and different builds. In the demo, there's just too many things we couldn't level up, unlock, or customize, such as pilot skills. On top of that, I just don't play a lot of third-person action games. In third-person shooters, I find that they lack the smoothness and precision that you find in first-person shooters. So while I love games like Deus Ex and Gears of War, it does take a bit for me to kind of reteach myself how to play them. This is on top of learning a new control scheme, which after spending years and years and years and years on one variant of bumper jumper or another, I find anything that's not bumper jumper to be unintuitive. So while I found Anthem to be clunky, kind of floaty in some places, I found the flight controls to be very imprecise. That may just be a me thing. I need to spend at least 10 to 15 hours with the game before I can give a solid judgment on how it plays. And after the 30, 40, 50, 60 hours I'm sure it'll take to get to the end of the game, or hope it'll take to get to the end of the game before reaching the end game, I'll more than likely be able to assess that in full confidence in my full review, but I won't be doing that here. I'd also like to point out that these are my opinions on the vertical slice we played in the demo. I've not been flown out by EA to have my hand held by a developer to make sure that I give the best gameplay possible for any previews that I would be doing. Nor have I consumed every hour-long live stream that BioWare has done, so I might not know something's in the game, but it just wasn't here in the demo. And of course, if I have an issue with the demo, and that issue is resolved in the full game, well, of course, it will be reflected in my review. With all of that said, Anthem is a rather interesting game, and I mean that. I enjoyed the music. I found the environments and the javelins to be incredibly beautiful and well-crafted. I really dig this sort of post-apocalyptic dungeon mecha punk motif that they're going with. The world feels lived in, the characters are amusing, and there seems to be a lot of life in this game. It looks like BioWare really wanted Anthem to have characters that were more than just cardboard cutout vending machines. And it really does show. And while I'm sure the charm of the characters will undoubtedly wear off once the game has reached its conclusion between story-relevant DLC and story-relevant DLC, and once you've experienced all the loops of things that people have to say, and your attention in the game moves from the story to the endgame loot grind, I find the effort put in here to be genuine, at least in the demo. The characters, most of which are lively and animated, and at this point, I do find quite entertaining. It should be noted that I am going to compare this a lot to Destiny in terms of story content and the way that the story is presented. The game is sort of asking for it with the whole, you're the protector of the last safe city behind this wall, and if it falls, so too does civilization. So it's not an unfair comparison to make when it's sort of the obvious one. But here, with the characters, with the NPCs that you interact with, dude, Anthem blows Destiny out of the water. No questions asked. Now, are the character interactions as good as other BioWare games? That's probably going to be the question on a lot of people's minds. And while I did enjoy them, This isn't Dragon Age Origins, this isn't Mass Effect 1, 2, or even 3, but I did enjoy them. In my time playing and exploring Fort Tarsis, I ran into the ambient conversations of multiple characters which fleshed out the state of the world.
We can't survive here.
Keep your voice down. No need to make this everyone's problem.
But it is everyone's problem. If they can't see this place is in trouble, they aren't paying attention. Everything outside that wall with teeth wants to kill us. And I'm pretty sure even things that don't have teeth will find a way.
Merrick, calm down.
Supplies can't get through. Who'd be crazy enough to deliver them? So how are we supposed to live? Why did we even come here?
Because we don't give up at the first sign of trouble. If life gets tough, we get tougher. You told me that once.
Yeah, I don't know. The heat, the humidity. Been hungry for 3 days. This has to get better.
I really hope that these ambient conversations do evolve over the course of the game to depict the state of the world and what the player character and other factions have achieved. And then there are the interactive NPCs like Zoe, a character who might have seen a rather significant model downgrade between the original showing of the game and this version we're presented with the demo. And we'll talk about how lackluster some of these character models look in comparison to other character models in a bit. But right now I want to talk about the novelty of just walking up to somebody in the game who's basically your coworker and shooting the shit with them, talking about their family, seeing how they're doing, stuff like that.
Hey Zell, keeping busy?
You're not the only one that keeps me on my toes.
Just your favorite.
Of course.
What's on the docket? Basic repairs?
Always. Plus, I'm refurbishing the inner lining of Wraith's Javelin. And Sentinel Hayden's getting extra lumber support whether he likes it or not. It's an easy ad.
Small comforts make a big difference.
People underestimate that. Those comforts make life better out there, even if you don't notice it every day. I like to think that matters. Especially since my son told me he's going to be a freelancer.
How old is he?
11. He'll want to be a dozen things before I have to worry. But I still worry.
There are risks, sure. But there's nothing like being out there helping people, seeing the world. Flying, it's not the worst dream for a kid to have.
You're not wrong. The world's chaos. If he can dream about good things that could come out of it, why not let him? Tomorrow we'll want to be a Koroks teamer anyway.
Besides, if he becomes a freelancer, you'll have his suit in top shape. That should give you some peace of mind.
Not sure that works when you're the pilot's mother. It barely works with the rest of you.
Because we're your favorites?
Always.
It's entirely optional and it adds to the world, going a long way to make it feel alive. Sure, there's kinda some deadpan stares, but I've learned more about the characters in Anthem in a very short window than I learned about the characters in Destiny in the same amount of time, making these characters, at least in this vertical slice of gameplay, feel more well-rounded and alive. I said at the top of the video I wasn't really going to talk about gameplay, and by that I meant I wasn't really going to criticize or critique it. I do have some problems with it. The controls felt kind of unnatural, the gameplay felt a little clunky, but that could just be me being used to one set of controls and not really used to third-person shooters, so I will hold judgment about that stuff until I've spent more time with the game. That being said, even though I had a couple of issues, the moment-to-moment combat loop is still pretty satisfying, with the caveat that I understand that I'm playing an unoptimized character and still learning the nuances of the game. So like I said, for now, until I've spent more time with the game, I'll chalk any hiccups that I ran into in terms of gameplay flow to either inexperience or poor gear, at least as far as combat goes. I also really enjoyed Javelin Customization. One of the things that always annoyed me in Destiny is that colors were tied to specific shaders. And if you like a specific shader, more so in Destiny 2, but you don't really like the texture effect that they've placed on it, be it metallic or carbon or any other number of textures that are in the game, well, you're shit out of luck. In Anthem, not only are you free to pick the color of the segments of armor as you will, but you're also free to pick the texture of those segments of armor, be it gloss, matte, or wear and tear. The breadth of Javelin customization is simply amazing. That said, if leaked screenshots are to be believed, that can cost you up to $20 in the cash shop and $8 a pop for textures. Now, we have no clue how old this is, or if this will actually ship in the game, or if these prices are final, but this is EA, so it is something to consider and keep an eye on. So we've talked about the world, the aesthetics, the music, the story, the characters. I touched on customization and talked a little bit about gameplay. And I think for the most part, I've been fairly positive. If you're the type of person that only wants hype, if you only want your opinion validated, if you want somebody to parrot what you already think and spew it back to you without any criticism whatsoever, well, this is the end of the video for you. There you go. Off you trot. You got the validation you needed. There were things I liked about it. Are they gone? Good. So, for anybody who wants a critical opinion of the game, here's some of the stuff I really didn't like. So my issues with Anthem, as presented in the demo, really come down to 3 things. One of which most people might consider a nitpick, so we'll go ahead and get that out of the way first. Graphically, this game really felt all over the place. The environments and the javelins were striking and beautiful. However, what really bothered me was the disparity in terms of quality between character models. Some of them looked really well done, high quality. Others, however, looked like placeholders. Zoe, comparatively to other NPCs that we interact with, looked like a poorly rendered potato. That by no means has anything to do with whether or not I find the character model attractive, mind you, which is apparently something you need to clarify. And this has everything to do with the model just being of lower quality compared to the others. For example, I don't find this concept version of the character to be all that sexually attractive as well. That said, I do find the model to be of much higher quality than what we find in the game. And if we're to drive the point home even a little further, I don't find either one of these dudes to be all that sexually appealing either, but I still find that their character model is of great quality, where Zoe looks like a potato, rendered for a last-gen console. And every background character also falls victim to this weird variation in quality. Some look like they're last-gen models, others look like they're just as good as some of the main NPCs. The modeling just kinda seems to be wildly all over the place and just very inconsistent, to the point that it's jarring. You can have an ugly game. Dragon Age Origins, one of my favorite games, is probably one of the ugliest games I've ever seen in my life. And it was ugly when it came out in 2009, but at least it's consistently ugly. The lack of consistency is what bothered me, and I hope it's something that was still being polished in the time between the demo 6 weeks ago and it going to gold certification, as unlikely as that hope is. My second issue is actually somewhat severe. It's this weird motion blur, movement blur, rendering effect that the game uses. It's all over the game, but it's mostly noticeable when in first person or underwater. There's a visual on your screen demonstrating what I'm talking about, but if you're listening, what's happening is when you turn, everything around you just blurs, then loads back in, even if you have the motion blur turned off. What I've seen people suggest is this is the result of some weird rendering technique that BioWare is using, where only the things that you are directly looking at are fully rendered, and a frame rate stuttering issue that seemed to affect the console versions of Anthem. This frame rate weird blur motion effect, with the lack of feedback when in first person, was actually rather nauseating for me. And I can't remember a time where I've ever been motion sick in my life, especially not from playing a video game. But these tower segments caused me to be nauseated, they caused my eyes to hurt, and they gave me a headache. Underwater gameplay did much of the same thing, and this isn't just a me issue. Mixer streamer Nathan Sane had a lot of the same issue I did with this.
My number one big reason why I might actually cancel my pre-order for this game is the underwater mechanics are terrible. Literally motion sickness inducing terrible. I was playing and I got stuck underneath the water, and I'm on PC, mind you, and just trying to navigate the caverns. It's disgusting. Like, it was just disgusting to move, it was disgusting to feel. And I don't know how it even got past playtesting, how somebody wasn't like, this feels awful, I literally feel sick. Maybe they were playing with a controller, who knows, but playing with a mouse and keyboard, trying to navigate the caverns, in the mission that I'm actually on right now, shut down the SCAR system operation or whatever. You have to, towards a certain part, you have to go through an underwater cavern. I'll put up the clips of me just getting frustrating. I ended up dying underneath the water because I was just like so frustrated, I just gave up.
And I've talked to other people who have experienced the same issue. With as much time as we'll be spending in the tower, which is a lot more than I think people realize, and we'll get to that momentarily, and with underwater segments being part of the game and part of the traversal of the world, if people are getting sick from these things, that's categorically unacceptable. And that brings us to my last issue in the demo, loot. In the demo, you do not have a player inventory. So you can't store a variety of weapons for different situations and switch to them as needed, nor can you pick up a new, shiny, legendary, super special awesome shotgun and equip it to try it out to see if it's something you like. You know, kind of like they showed off at the world premiere of the game.
Oh, come on. He's something good. Oh, yes! Jer's Wrath.
Oh, nice.
If the demo is an accurate representation of the game's loot system, then this is a huge issue. Not only do we not get to see the loot that we've gotten until we finish whatever activity we're playing, but if you get a shiny new weapon, instead of going in and equipping it to test it out like you would in something like Destiny, if you get a new piece of loot that you want to test out, you have to finish or quit out of whatever activity you're in, go back to the fort, get out of your javelin, walk all the way over to the forge, load into that, then go to a menu within a menu, and then you can equip your weapons. Then you go back to your javelin, select a new mission or go into free play, load into that activity, and then you can finally test out your new weapon. The same thing applies to leveling as well, and you have to do that every single time you want to upgrade or equip a new piece of gear. Now, some of you might be inclined to point at both Warframe and Monster Hunter World. The key difference with those games is they're both crafting games. In Monster Hunter, I'm literally going out to kill monsters to bring their parts back to be crafted into armor and weapons. And the same thing applies to Warframe as well. What's not happening in these games is I'm not walking over a shotgun, picking up said shotgun, actually just putting it into an inventory that I mysteriously, after I put a weapon into it, can't access. What? Now, benefit of the doubt. Perhaps, maybe, just maybe, there will be a character inventory in the game. After all, pilot leveling was not a thing in the demo. However, like I said, there was an inventory in the game used to equip gear. It was at the fort, which means they just arbitrarily decided not to have the player inventory available to us during the demo and decided it would be better to show us a game where we have to traverse back and forth and back and forth and back and forth in order to do anything. That doesn't sound like a really good demo. It would also mean that the developers are either just stupid or colossally stupid. Because if we go back and take a look at the loot system and make the Warframe Monster Hunter comparison, where you go and you forge weapons, because you can forge weapons in this game, except that's not the only way you're getting weapons, so it doesn't make sense that you can't just equip what you find in the field, because you are finding things in the field. The only reason that I think they would do something like this is to bring you to the tower as much as possible. Why? Because that brings you closer to the microtransactions. You can't spend money if you're actually out playing the game. At least I want to believe it's something malicious like that, because any other version of this is just categorically stupid. Because really, if we go, well, this isn't malicious, this isn't them trying to bring you back to the tower over and over and over and over and over and over again because you can't buy microtransactions if you're not in the tower, then this is just somebody really being a fucking idiot. They thought that it would be a great idea in an RNG looter shooter where crafting is not the primary way you get loot to not let people have an inventory. Someone, through some Herculean leap in fucking logic that us mere mortals will never be able to comprehend, thought that that was a good idea. Somebody thought it was actually fun to make players go back and forth between the tower to get new loot and then equipped it and then, oh god, hope and pray You like the new piece of loot that you just equipped it, or you're going right back to the tower to equip something else. Who thought anyone wanted to spend the majority of their time loading back and forth between the social space and the game? I wasn't a fan of it in Warframe, I wasn't a fan of it in Monster Hunter, and thank fucking God, one of the best things that Destiny has fucking implemented is the virtual phasing out of this mechanic. Maybe it's just a me thing, but I think it's kind of unintuitive. I mean, imagine going through a piece of endgame content like a raid or something like that, and you're getting all this raid gear or endgame gear, but you can't do shit with it until you either finish the activity or leave the activity. Yet, you're doing this activity for the sole purpose of getting this gear so you can level up so that doing these activities are easier. So why wouldn't you want to be able to equip the gear and level up and get a better gear and do this, that? It's just stupid. Why would you design it that way? Why would you make it so inconvenient? This loot system is just a huge issue for me because it's so inconvenient, it's so archaic. And worst of all, it's designed to waste my time, your time, everybody's fucking time. Like, the developers don't give a shit. This was just the easiest way to do it. Either that, or they're trying to sell us something. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. And like always, stay frosty.